Hey, everybody, welcome and thanks for coming. This is Retirement Solution Group, and I'm really excited today to invite you into the kind of conversations that we have in our shop here. My name's Stephen. As the founder and CEO of RSG, I tend to, get a lot of credit and get a lot of awards for a lot of the smart ideas that come from our company. But the truth is, most of the good smart ideas don't come from me. It comes from all the smart people who work at our organization. And so I'm super pleased today to be joined by three of them who are going to talk about the Secure Act 2.0. And the reason we've selected these particular team members is that we think we've got a good representation of four different perspectives. Secure Act 2.0 has been getting a lot of attention lately, and a lot of inboxes have been flooded by different people with different thoughts on it. And we really want to kind of look at it from RSG being a true retirement plan specialist shop, but we have people here who really focus on the participant experience, from the technical administrative compliance experience, new business, and kind of the industry in general. So that's kind of what we're looking to do today. So I don't need to introduce them. Again, the cat's going to be out of the bag. I'm not really the smart one here. So I guess I'll turn it over to one of those really smart people to introduce herself. Jules.
Thanks, Steve, for recognizing my brains. Yeah, my name is Julie Yanez. I've been with RSG for over 10 years. What I do here is I oversee the plan administration of both defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans. If I'm not doing that, I'm usually answering some questions about maybe acquisitions to plan terminations. One thing I do not do well is talk about sales. I give that all to Kevin. Kevin can talk all he wants about sales and golfing. I golf, but I'm a hacker, but Kevin is the real deal, so.
I don't know about that, Julie, but thank you for the introduction. Yeah, my name's Kevin Delaney. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at RSG. I've been with the company now 2 years, and my role is to work with the referral partners out there in the community, build brand awareness, and drive sales to RSG. Christy Chang, who is by far the best tennis player here at RSG, allow you to introduce yourself.
Thanks for not mentioning my awful golf game, Kevin. My name is Christy Chang. I am a relationship manager here at RSG and have been since, we'll call it 2006-ish. And my job is really simple. I am responsible for engaging employees into the plan and making sure that they have access when they have questions to a team of education specialists. And our job is to keep them on track and focused on the long-term strategy, which is, to save enough for retirement. So it's a good team here.
Well, and I kind of already said who I am, and I think a lot of you may know who I am. But again, I'm Steve. I'm the founder of RSG, and I don't know, how to best describe what I do. I run I run a majority of our trustee committees on the fiduciary side, on our full service clients, run a lot of the strategy of the company and stuff like this, and how the industry is going to change, and participate in some of our lobbyist organizations. And really, at the end of the day, I get the title of the grumpy old man, because I actually have been in the industry since Bill Clinton was president, going back to 1995, which is kind of crazy to say it like that, but so I've seen a lot of different iterations and seen a lot of change. And obviously, again, what we're going to talk today about specifically is some of the change that's coming. And if it's okay, I guess I'll use that as the transition to just kind of tee up the topic a little bit. And then everybody's favorite part is I'm going to shut up and the smart people will talk a little bit more. But, the reason we're having this discussion, like I said, is because we think a lot of change is coming. Secure Act 2.0. And it's an acronym, actually, and I always screw it up. So, Christy, you're the acronym queen. What exactly does Secure Act stand for again? I always mess this up.
I love a good acronym. It stands for setting every community up for retirement enhancement.
Pretty broad, Christy.
I think it's the enhancement part I always mess. But anyways, so well done on the acronym. And now all of the rest of you, particularly on the HR side, can sound wicked smart. Because you'll know what the acronym actually is. So really, what's the point? Secure Act 2.0 is exactly that. It's the second iteration of legislation that passed in actually December of 19, which was Secure Act 1.0. People, particularly on the compliance side, like myself and Julie, really thought this was going to be the topic du jour of 2020. And then, of course, a little thing happened called COVID, and basically everybody completely ignored Secure Act, and it was kind of a non-issue because we had to deal with a global crisis, and we had to deal with a lot of different legislative and business changes that impacted all of us. So in 21, we started to kind of revisit, like, oh yeah, that happened, and what do we need to do because that happened? Well, meanwhile, Congress was already meeting and kind of working on the second iteration. And really, at the end of the day, Secure Act 1.0 and 2.0, the real idea is that they want more Americans saving for retirement. It seems, from my perspective, that they've stopped any sort of an argument that enabling or trying to encouraging people doing on their own just ain't going to work, that it's got to go through some sort of an employer-sponsored plan, that all the data says people save more if you do it that way, they save better, they have better habits, etc. So there's both good and bad, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about today, that does to small business owners. And even I think Christy will talk about a little bit on the participant side with it. But to the general point, I guess I just want to be clear. Why is the government doing this? From my perspective, is that they believe that there's a savings crisis that is coming. With the baby boomers retiring, I think it's really gotten everybody's attention that it's getting close to dangerous. And so there is a significant desire from DC to have thousands and thousands and thousands. The goal that I've heard used specifically is they want 50,000 plus new 401k plans over, I think it's a 10-year cycle or something. I can't remember the time period. And then with that, millions and millions of additional Americans who are going to be saving into these plans. And so keep in mind, in all the other things that we're going to say, number one, that's why they're doing it. And number two is, I don't think Secure Act 2.0 is the end of the discussion. I think a 3.0 is coming, and likely a 4, etc. Because this is the only thing that I can think of in the last 4 to 5 years that the Republicans and Democrats seem to be able to agree on. Pension legislation, retirement plan legislation, literally is the only thing that I think has gotten bipartisan support, or at least that I'm aware of. So, anyways, that's just a real quick tee up of kind of what I think that they're trying to get accomplished. But I think there's a lot of different kind of pros and cons, or immediate ideas that it's going to impact people's realities, both at the business level, which we're going to talk a lot about today, but also at the participant level. And I guess, Christy, maybe you could jump in with a couple of just kind of a couple of key points you think that this is going to be felt on the participant side. And by the way, everybody, it's a slow roll. Secure Act 2.0 is a big topic today, but it's a slow roll. It's actually rolling out over a 3-year window. So some of the things Christy may talk about isn't today, but it's coming. So anyways.
Right, and the emphasis being on exactly what you said, Steve, is that Congress is trying to make it easier for employees to save, and really to save more into their plan. So by far, for me, the mandatory automatic enrollment feature for all new plans starting in 25 is going to be the biggest impact, because it's going to get massive numbers of new employees participating at a very quick rate. And the best part is they're not going to have to fill out even one piece of paper to get started at a 3% rate. And the better part is that they will be automatically increasing their contributions annually. Again, all of this being automated, will make it simpler and more effective to increase rates. And really, the second, I think, most impactful provision is the student loan repayment matching provision, which is at the same time creative and useful, and really addresses the biggest pushback that I hear in my meetings from employees who have to choose between making a student loan repayment or saving for retirement. So to me, those are definitely number one and number two. How about you guys?
Yeah, Christy. Oh, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. Christy, Kevin, I have some faves myself. I mean, I think the two you mentioned, Christy, are awesome. I mean, this bill is extensive. I guess I should call it an act. It's like 340 pages, 96 provisions spanning 10 years. So I guess we can go on and on about that. So I'll give you a couple additional. I'm sure Kevin from a sales perspective has some that he likes to share also. You know, I definitely am looking at my parents, and well, I guess now they're even past retirement age, but maybe even looking at myself. I mean, now they're changing for the ages of 60 through 63. You get to increase your catch up, which is fantastic. I really don't know why they picked those three magical ages, but they surely did. So between that time, you can do the greater of 10,000, or of course they always have to put a formula in here. They just can't keep it $10,000, but it's 150 times whatever the limit is at effect at that year. So I think that's great. Thinking of retiring. Sorry to tell you that, Steve. Thinking of retiring. I'm looking forward to being able to give a little more money to my 401k plan. Another thing, Rothification. Roth. That's all we're going to talk about, right? We learned about Roth when it came to 401ks. You could either do it pre-tax or do it Roth. Christy could talk to participants on days about which to do. I know I talked to her myself about if I should do Roth or not Roth. But now they're even looking at to do it for elective contribution and match. So Roth is the name of the game also in Secure 2.0. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, agreed, Julie. You know, from my perspective, I would have to say that, you know, the law is exciting. You know, I think that's the important thing to take away here. I mean, this is all good for Americans and good for small businesses. And by far, you know, having conversations today about retirement plans in the small and medium-sized business community is easier because the Secure Act has put it more on the forefront of business owners' radar. And it's an easier conversation to broach, you know, with business owners and with the partners that we share, because people are curious about it. You know, what do I need to worry about? What do I need to think about today? What do I need to think about tomorrow? So by far the first, you know, impact that I'm feeling is that folks are willing to have the conversation about retirement plans that might have been unwilling, you know, in prior years or in the past. So it's really brought it to the forefront of the conversation to have with business owners out there in the community. And also, you know, to dovetail that, the tax credits. I mean, how can somebody in sales not be excited about what the government is doing to incentivize these small businesses to create the behavior change that they're trying to elicit through this act, right? I mean, we need to save more. We need employees and regular people to save more, and how better can we do that by giving them the means to save through an employer deducted plan? You know, that's the easiest way for them to save. As Steve said earlier, they save more. So incentivize the small business by giving them additional tax credits. It used to be a smaller tax credit phased out over a 3-year period of time where people would get $500 each year up to 3 years. You know, now they're eligible to receive 100% of their startup costs up to a $5,000 maximum over 3 years. I mean, that's powerful, powerful stuff for the small business owner that had apprehension over costs. So those two features definitely excite me the most.
I mean, it's funny you guys say that. A lot of what you said, I think, fits in. I mean, I'm pretty active in the American Retirement Association, which is, of course, our industry's big lobby group. And I think, in general, the consensus is everything that we're trying to do here is positive and is addressing a major problem. But, you know, and Christy talked about auto enrollment being so easy for people. I think that there's a lot of macro benefits. But once you get down to the micro, meaning how does it impact your organization, is where there's also going to be a lot of decisions. So my biggest thing that I keep saying to everybody is pause, slow down and think through. So, like, you know, take the auto enrollment that Christy talked about. Well, if you run a company, let's say you own a large restaurant group, right? Possibility is that in the past, again, I've been doing this almost 30 years, which sounds crazy, but you always, every restaurant group I've ever worked with does safe harbor match. You always have to, and it's a formula we use. It means you've got to commit to a certain match, you got to commit to 100% vesting, and then they're going to be able to pass all the tests that Julie and her team run. Okay, that's all great. And I think that, again, a lot of our advisors and those referral partners and CPAs, et cetera, that, particularly Kevin works with and we all work with, would always just not even think and tell people that that's what you do or that's what you have to do. And I still believe a lot of the folks in the industry will do that without thinking, because that's what we've always done. But wait a minute, what if we now have to auto enroll all these people? And you have 300 people maybe that in the past probably weren't going to participate. So the impact of that safe harbor match contribution from a P&L perspective as a business owner was pretty nominal, right? And it was really a benefit for your owners and executive leadership team. It just totally makes you rethink how you're going to structure that benefit. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. And I think from a macro perspective, it's probably necessary, but how it impacts each group is going to be slightly different. And, again, Jules brought up the Rothification, bringing that back to from kind of a legislative perspective. The one thing the government is all about these days, and we can debate whether it's real or fake numbers, and I think there's obviously a lot of accounting games that they play, but they want to be, revenue neutral. So if they're going to give credits, like Kev talked about, for setting up plans and using more auto features, which is great, then they got to how do I come back with that money, right, from an accounting perspective? And the answer is Roth, like Jules said, and we're going to talk about that a lot. They really want to promote more Roth. Why? Because they get to tax us today, and it's revenue that the current Congress gets to use versus it being deferred, decades down the road. So that's why it's so important to them. We can all debate whether it's better or worse from an investment perspective, but for them, it's accounting and it's money that they get to spend, which I think we all agree they like to do. Yeah, I mean, so I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of go with this conversation, but there's some real opportunities out there too. And I don't know which ones you think are going to be that's going to get the most attention, because like we said, it's really a 3-year phase with the RMDs going up to 10 years, like Julie talked about earlier. But in 2023 is always kind of where I'm saying today, what do business owners need to stop and start kind of thinking about with this stuff, and where are the opportunities kind of lie the most? And for me, it's becoming just aware of it, and really starting to think about is this going to impact your specific group? But I don't know. I mean, from a compliance perspective, Julie, there's really not too much we need them doing today, is there?
No, I think you nailed it, Steve. I think it's more about education and being aware of what is really out there, and everything takes effect at different dates. I mean, we could talk about that, but it's just going to phase in and it's just going to become natural. I don't want to see that as a confusing point for anyone, by no means. But I think there's a lot of opportunities also, and I'm sure Christy could talk more about this. But I also, besides yelling about Rothification, I think another word you can always use is expand. The opportunity to expand stuff, like you can expand the access to your retirement plan, either through emergency savings. Unfortunately, I guess not unfortunately, but fortunately, about terminal illness, you can get some money out of your 401k. Domestic abuse now. I think no longer is the 401k just going to be a 401k. I think it's going to have a lot of similarities to almost like a banking account that you can withdraw money. It's not, you have to terminate anymore. Hardships, loans, all the similar ones we hear about all the time. But I think there's going to be other avenues to get your money out. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for both participants and the expansion of coverage through, like you guys talked about, auto enrollment. I think there's also, long-term, part-term employees. Secure One brought this, another acronym, Christy, LP, I think LP something T. But basically now they're even saying that if you work for a company, if you look at Secure Point One, I guess, if you look at if you were an employee, you should be an employee, but if you were there for over 500 hours, 3 consecutive years, you are now a part of the 401k. The government then said, hey, not good enough, not good enough. Secure 2.0 comes in and says you only have to do it for 2 years. So I think the name of the game is an expansion. Kevin, how do you see this from the sales perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I agree with a lot of what you said there for sure. I mean, the reality is there's just never been a better time to look at starting a 401k plan. I mean, that's really what the law presents and what the act has put at the forefront. But, you know, more importantly, and what I love that you said there was that the benefit is changing. It's morphing, right? It used to just be the retirement plan. And what it does is it almost kind of blends in a lot of what's been going on in our industry, which is financial wellness, right? A lot of folks and advisors that support plans, you know, financial wellness has been a hot topic for the last couple of years, right? So it's now almost utilizing the 401k as a financial wellness tool within their culture of their employees to address student loans, to address, you know, emergency savings, to address their retirement. And it requires, I think the opportunity is that most of these employers really need to make sure they're working with a prudent consultant that knows what they're doing. And really, you know, the unique part of having compliance and advisory, you know, perspectives for a client, I think is important today. You know, you just don't want to work with just an average person with regards to your choices and the expansion that you spoke of, Julie. All these features and ways to go about the 401k are changing. So that means that I think the way that the employer looks at the benefit needs to change as well, and that will take some time. But you know, there's great opportunity there to have great consultative conversations, and more importantly, I think that the employers out there need to just make sure that they're surrounding themselves with really strong consultants and specialists that really understand all the ins and outs of this.
If I could jump in on one quick thing there, and I think a lot of this has to do with the participant side, so I don't want to hog Christy's spot because she's going to be there. But one of the concepts that I've been talking a lot about with a lot of business owners when I'm trying to tee them up and say, hey, 23, there's some changes. There's some changes to force outs and RMDs and whatever, but really the big change is coming. And like I said, 23, in my opinion, is slow down and think. And I really think, Jules, you teed it up perfectly. Do you want your 401k to become a financial wellness tool or to stay as a retirement tool? Because some of these optional things are going to really start to change that. And you can say, well, why wouldn't I want to? Because I do think there's an administrative side to this that's going to affect your payroll, that's going to affect, you know, and Christy can do a better job talking about that than me, but the employee experience. But there is a complication that I think a lot of small business owners, you know, need to just think it through. And again, I think of the participant side as well.
Yeah, no doubt the participant's the winner out of this whole discussion.
Right.
And I love Julie's use of the word expansion because it really is all about the overall improvement of our financial health and wellness and picture, because now you're able to bring in topics into what, you know, before was just a 401k meeting. You can talk about emergency savings. You can talk about 529 money that you don't use that can be rolled into a Roth for your child. You know, you can talk about student loan repayment matching. So there's new and exciting topics that you can bring into these meetings with employees now to re-engage them or to engage them for the first time, going beyond just the 401k. So it is really an exciting opportunity, and also for employers to use as an attraction and retention tool for their you know, new hires and to keep really talented employees on staff, because this is now such an expansive benefit. So I think for sure the winner here is the employee. So.
Well, I guess I'll be, again, grumpy old man role. As a small business owner myself, but does our payroll company today does not have money types for things like emergency savings, does not have money types for things like student loan debt. And I still get, Christy, I completely agree. Like, you know, the participants can win, but there's still so many things, not only as a pension consultant, but as a business owner, that I'm looking at our own plan and company and saying, but wait a minute, who's making the payment to the student debt provider? Is it RSG? Is it the payroll company? Or is it the record keeper? And I still get confused on how some of that stuff's going to flow.
Being in compliance, Steve, I am with you. I think we should also talk about the fact that there's a lot of guidance that still
Yeah,
needs to be flushed out. Not everything is known. I mean, let's be real. This is the government here. Like, this might not come for another 10 years, and we might have Secure 4 by that time.
yeah,
So I think you have to be patient. I mean, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here, but there's a lot of stuff that is not known. I mean, from the record keeper perspective, there's a lot of moving parts here. Plan documents might have to be amended, and you know, we already went through PPA 06 and tricycle, but I think there's going to be a lot of amendments that's going to have to be done to make this all work, and we don't have guidance about how to do this
right.
yet. So I think participants and plan sponsors have to be patient with myself and my team, because we don't really know. We're on a wait and see basis also, like everyone else. I mean, Christy, I'm sure you're going to get some questions from the participants, and you're going to be asking me, and I'm going to say, I don't know.
Yeah,
I will still be asking you, but thankfully, everyone's going to be in the same boat. And I think, another challenge will be making sure that employees don't get information overload with all of these new offerings and creative ways that they can put money away for different goals. And closely connected to that, I think companies will need to have a very strong HR department
For sure.
to work closely with our team to make sure things are rolled out properly and operationally, and that things are communicated to employees properly in a timely manner.
well, even like, again, bringing it back to the business owner perspective, and Kevin, you touch a lot of these RFPs, but obviously Christie's participant experience is a huge part of our RFP process, how the different vendors support us administratively, and Julie's team is a huge part of that RFP process. But now I think it's going to be some of these things too. Like, we're going to have to say, hey, how are you going to incorporate student loan debt repayments?
Right. Sure.
Are you going to be sending it, and do you do it only to a certain number? Like, does it need to be Sallie Mae or Fannie or whatever, government groups? But what if somebody's got a private loan? And does that mean then it falls on the sponsor? Like, I just keep thinking through something like an RFP that we've been doing forever. And again, I keep going back to it. It just makes me at times go, stop or slow down and think and say, how is it going to be different? So I don't even know if we've really thought about that too much, but that's the stuff that pops into my head.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, Christy, you mentioned it. I mean, when people get flooded with all these different choices and moving parts, and do I do this or do I do that? Whether it's on the participant level or the business owner level, sometimes it can lead to, I'm just going to table this, and Steve can probably appreciate that from a business owner perspective. We'll put it on the executive committee's conversation for next month, right? Or next quarter. And so that's the only repercussion or negative or downside that I really see out of this, is that, yeah, it's great on the participant level. It incentivizes the small business. It's brought the conversation of retirement to the forefront. From a government's perspective, it's addressing two things at once: the 401k savings crisis coupled with the student loan crisis, kind of all in one law, as well as everything else there going on. So I mean, I get it. It's really good for us all. But as it all pans out, like Steve's saying, and whittles on down to these small and medium-sized businesses, is it really going to make them go ahead and start a plan, or are they just going to wait for the state mandates to roll back to the lower numbers, and then they'll just say, oh, I'll just do this because I don't really know what to do with all those choices? And again, it just comes back to who they surround themselves with in regards to their consultants and business advisors. I mean, I think that's really where they get great advice, and they can really identify what's a priority and what the best options are for them.
I mean, I don't remember the exact year. I want to say it was about 5 or 6 years ago. I know it was pre-COVID. John Hancock did that famous study where the average 401k advisor had 1.8 plans.
Right.
So, like, obviously, for most of the people in that math who do this industry, they have 1 or 2 plans at most. And, obviously a big part of where we think we're different is the fact that we run now, I think we touch around 600-700 if you consider the pooled employer plan, adopting employers. So obviously, like, I think that it's a complicated conversation and you start to get into it. But I even go beyond just the 401k. Like, how are the payroll companies going to handle it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so your 401k, you may think of this as a 401k legislation. So you're going back to and say, okay, I'm with whatever. Our plan happens to be with John Hancock, and John Hancock is programmed in a way that we're comfortable with. We're good. But is our payroll company going to be able to handle it correctly, right? And so I think it's going to make people, force them to look at, like you said, Kev, their consultants and their advisors, but also the various vendors they're working with, and it may be a little bit more expansive than you think. It could even go beyond the 401k and really make you rethink your payroll solution, which I don't think, or at least most of the business owners I've talked to, are even thinking about that as part of this equation. And nobody likes to switch payroll. That is a administrative pain in the butt. But, and again, we're not saying you would need to, but I think it'll have to be something that you need to at least review. So it's going to put more stuff on everybody's to-do list, whether or not, they like it. And I think that's part of there's so many positives with this thing. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, millions and millions of more Americans saving, and millions more Americans saving more, that outweighs the pain. But I do think that there's some pain coming. And from my perspective, and I don't do it as much as I used to, but I started my career doing enrollment meetings, and Christy still does hundreds and thousands of those throughout the year, talking to the individual participant. I've said this 1,000 times, and Christy, if you think it's changed, let me know, but there are a zillion really smart people out there who don't really get 401k. And the one other thing here I think we have done is the participant's the big winner, but there's more decisions for them to make, not less.
Sure.
In the coming years. I mean, I don't know how you think that's going to affect the general discussion there, but.
Well, that's actually going to be my key takeaway, and I'm always about summarizing, tell me what I need to know in a nutshell. And for me, the key takeaway for the participant, for the employees is really simple. And it's that every single provision in this act is designed for their benefit. So, with the employee being at the center of all of this, there's going to be lots more for us to talk about, during our meetings. You're going to be presented with a lot more options, choices that, are creative, all making it easier for you to save and to save more and to reach your goals. So just be prepared. Think about what your choices are. Maybe these meetings will take an hour instead of half an hour now. But it's all a good thing. That's really, my key takeaway, and it's all very, very positive.
But the one thing, and I'm not trying to call you out or disagree with you, but I guess but a lot of those, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of those are optional.
They are.
Right? So what if company A or client A decides that because of their payroll solution, or because of their vendor, or just because John Doe and payroll is overworked as it is, and they chose not to do the student debt? Because at least the way the current 2.0 is written is that's a choice going into 24. But then the next client or the next company next door to them does have it. Like, I guess what I wonder is will this become a discussion around the water cooler? Or is this going to become a discussion when people are looking at two companies that now you're like, well, these guys do student debt payment and these ones don't? And again, I don't think that the average person is really thinking it through to that level, but I think that's coming. I mean, do you?
I absolutely think, going back to what I said about it being an attraction and retention tool, that prospective employees will decide on which company to work for based on the full benefit package. So again, it's a win-win for the employee, maybe not for the employer, but I do think that companies will customize these new provisions based on what their workforce needs are. For sure. So again, it's an opportunity, in my opinion, to really create something that's useful and a huge benefit.
Hey, I know we can talk about this stuff for hours, particularly pension geeks like us, but I know we have to wrap this up. I mean, I think that you got to always lead with so what, right? And to me, the so what is this is getting a lot of noise, and a lot of people started listening, and then they're actually finding out there's not really a ton to do today, and a lot of stuff's still pending. And then I believe a lot of business owners and executives have kind of tabled it. And I would respectfully disagree with that approach too. I think that the key here is start familiarizing yourself with it, start thinking about it, and start making sure you're having smart business decisions with the right business consultants. Obviously, I have a skewed perspective and believe in specialists like us, but I think the point is change is coming. Decisions need to be made that'll affect compliance, participants, starting new plans, starting new features, and you just need to make sure that you're having the right conversations with the right people. And obviously, any way we can help, we're always happy to. So again, thanks everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. We want this to be, one of the first, but what we hope to be many conversations on these kind of topics that affect you guys. And we really hope it's helpful. So again, thanks for the time. Thanks for the thoughts, and let us know how we can be of further help. So again, appreciate it.